Hi, I'm Brooke Cormier and welcome to this video. If you don't know me, I am a full-time artist. I make paintings for a living, but gardening is a passion of mine, so I thought I'd take you on this year's journey of transforming my dumpy apartment balcony into an urban oasis. So let's get into it. As usual, my terrace was in quite rough shape at the beginning of spring. So once all the snow melted here in Toronto, I started to clean things up. If you watched last year's garden tour, you know that I planted English ivy in my reeling baskets, thinking that they would survive the Canadian winter. But guess what? I was wrong. So I discarded them, which is fine because honestly, I like the look of Creeping Jenny better, which you'll see a little later. I use my neighbor's cherry blossom tree as an indicator when I should start planting my garden. And what a magnificent indicator it is.
It's so nice this time of year.
Oh yeah.
All the petals are falling and it looks so pretty.
The cocoa liners in my railing baskets were on their last legs, and there was no way I was going to get another season out of them, so I found some pretty cheap ones at Walmart to replace them. And this already made a big difference aesthetically. Honestly, I was pretty late planting this year because I had some family and friends from overseas come to visit, and I just didn't have time. But on May 28th, I finally got started. Last year, I planted like 90% annuals, which means they all died over the winter and I needed to replace them. So this year, I thought, what the heck? Why don't I just try planting some perennials? Then they could come back next year and I can stop spending so much money on plants. I always keep track of how much money I am spending on the garden, so I'll put this year's cost breakdown on the screen if you're interested. Honestly, I have not done a ton of research on growing perennials in containers, so this is just a trial and error experiment for me, which is my favorite way of self-teaching. So I'll do my best to keep the plants alive over the winter, and we'll just have to see which ones will come back next year. I guess I didn't check the weather report when choosing this planting day, and but once the rain stopped, I was able to squirrel-proof all the plants, which involves a lot of chicken wire, power tools, and patience. This process is really time-consuming, but it makes a huge difference because without this physical barrier, the squirrels would be uprooting plants left, right, and center. After all the planters were ready, it was cleanup time. This outdoor carpet was looking pretty dirty, so I took it upon myself to give it a deep clean. Do I have any experience with deep cleaning carpets? No. But I found some biodegradable toilet bowl cleaner and I thought, hey, let's give her a go. And guess what? It worked pretty well. This baker's rack that is definitely an indoor piece of furniture but lives outside on the terrace was also looking pretty gross. So I gave that a nice scrub too. It was then time to put everything back in its rightful spot. And while I patiently waited for my garden to grow, it was time to start my next project. I had the idea to occupy this corner space with another planter by attaching it to the railings with zip ties, but as you can see, it didn't really work out. So I took to the drawing board and I sketched out something much more grand. A 5'2" plant stand that could hold even more plants. And while I was at it, I thought I would refurbish this other plant stand that was completely falling apart. So I took off all the legs and discarded the nasty old wood. My parents let me use some extra wood lying around their place, which definitely helped keep the cost of this project really low. My dad gave me a lesson on how to use the circular saw, and I got to work. This project made me realize how much I love using power tools. And it is my dream to have a workshop of my own one day that is just filled with every tool you can think of so I can make any project come to life. Once I was back at my apartment, it was time to assemble the plant stands. I started with a smaller one, and please do not question this design. My choice of lumber was limited, and I made it this way mostly for aesthetic purposes. Once all the pieces of wood were glued together, I secured it with a lot of screws to ensure this thing was not going to fall apart. I then screwed the legs on. And it was looking pretty good. Honestly, I'm not sure how much longer these legs are gonna last since they're a bit on the rusty side, but that's a problem for future Brooke. I was really happy with the result of this project. I think it looks 100 times better than before, and it really fits with the rest of the terrace nicely. The 5-foot plant stand was a little trickier to make. I did everything that I could by myself, but ended up calling in some backup for the assembly portion of the project. All the wood that I'm using for these plant stands are actually recycled planks from an outdoor deck, so they're already treated to be weather resistant, which was a bonus because I didn't have to worry about sealing or staining them. Then it was finally time to see if it worked. I secured the stand to the railing with some heavy-duty zip ties in several areas to make sure that it wouldn't fall over. And I gotta say, it looks pretty good. What I love about this plant stand is that it's making use of a space that otherwise wouldn't be used. And just wait till you see when it's all filled with plants. Before we get into the grand reveal, I thought I'd share some highlights from this year's gardening season. First of all, I had many more butterflies visiting the garden this year, which was such a treat. And of course, I also loved that there were so many bees hanging around at all times. An unexpected but pleasant surprise was finding some mushrooms in my reeling baskets. And last but not least, perhaps my favorite highlight was observing this raccoon in my neighbor's yard who had eaten way too many cherries. Okay, without further ado, let's see this balcony garden transformation. Oh, hello, and welcome to the tour portion of the video. Today is August 12th, and I believe my garden is maybe only a little bit past its peak. As you may have been able to tell, the color scheme this year is kind of like pink and purple and yellow, which I really love. Last year my garden didn't have enough color, and the year before that it was like too much color, and I feel like maybe I've achieved the sweet spot. Here we have some stone crop. It was in full bloom only a few weeks ago, and the bees were loving it, and the flowers were nice and pink and everything, but since it stopped flowering, I really cut it back, and let's just not spend too much time looking at that. For the herb section of the garden this year, we have two different kinds of parsleys. We have basil. This basil we've already harvested how many times? We've harvested this 3 times, and let me tell you, we've made some pretty good pesto. This right here, this flat leaf parsley, I grew from a seed, and that's the first time that I've ever grown anything from a seed before, so call me Mrs. Green Thumb. Okay, I think that my favorite plant this year is these beautiful cosmos. I just think that these flowers are, what do I even want to say about them? They're feminine, they're elegant, the bees love them, and they're a beautiful color. I guess that's all. They're gorgeous. For the baskets, I switched back to Creeping Jenny this year because I didn't really like the ivy last year, and this just, it's always a showstopper, you know? Everybody's always like,
yeah, Creeping Jenny.
I mean, look at it. It's like a waterfall of plant. These are salvia. They were called saucy salvia, and I love the color. I kind of like tried to make my outfit actually match with it, because here we have a dwarf perennial sage, is what it's called. It doesn't look very good right now. I don't know what's wrong, but it's looking very crispy. We're trying to figure it out. But you know, that's one of the great things about gardening. If it wasn't challenging, wouldn't be fun. Right? One of my favorite additions to the garden this year is this giant plant stand, because it just gives me more room to put more plants on here. I've got some mint, and this mint came back from last year, and I've been using that in my mojitos. Actually, I haven't even had any mojitos this year. What have we used this for? This is a columbine, but I also love the foliage. I think that the foliage reminds me of like giant clovers, and I'm feeling lucky when I'm out here in this nice garden. Here we've got a coleus, and I think that this was a nice addition because, you know, it's purple and it goes with the theme, and also the bees love the coleus. The bees are all up on these stalks day. Up here we have some sweet alyssum. Damn it. I always mess that up. I love the color of these. I think it ties in the color scheme very nicely. Over here, we have a tick seed. I'm loving this because it's just flowering like no other. And it's fun to deadhead because I bought myself a pair of pruning scissors. And that's me every morning. I come out like this. This is supposed to flower all the way until like the fall. So that's great. Ew, that is proof that the squirrels have been here. Yuck. But actually, we haven't had that bad luck with the squirrels this year, and I think it's due to the fact that there is a giant family of hawks living in the neighborhood. And I think that it has helped with the squirrel population, so thank you, hawks. Over here we have an astilbe. As you saw earlier in the video, it has these beautiful feathery pink flowers, which are so nice, and then they died and they never came back. And I think it's because before I had them put over there and the astilbe was just getting way too much sun. And since I've moved it, now it is just exploding. It is so much happier over here in this shady area of the garden. The foliage is popping, popping. And here we have the mono lavender that I propagated from last year. So if you remember in last year's garden tour video, this thing grew massive. It was literally like this tall, and I was like, she's so nice. That was my favorite plant last year. I cut a stem off and I put it in water over the winter time, and I replanted it, and here she is. Still healthy, still looking good, okay? One of my other favorite additions to the garden has been these LED tea lights. So I bought these tea lights off of Amazon. I'll leave the link below. I kind of splurged on them. I think they were like $60, which at first I was like, it's pretty steep. No, not $60 per. It was $60 for 8 of them, I think. And they're solar powered, and they automatically turn on when the sun goes down. And they have a nice warm light. It's like a yellowy, it really replicates a flame, you know? And then it flickers just like a flame would. And every night they come on, and it's like fairyland out here. I look out the door and I feel joy in my heart. So we want to make sure that the tea lights are scattered around the garden at different levels, you know? It's about the ambiance. Bird bath has been doing well. Don't look too closely. I think there's some flies. Birds are still loving it. They're not really bathing in it. They're just drinking from it, but it's fine with me. I just want the birds to be around me. Yeah. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for joining me on the 2024 garden tour. It has been my pleasure to walk you through all the plants. I hope you found it interesting, inspiring. Maybe you would also like to plant some plants. I would recommend it. It's therapeutic, it's lovely. Please subscribe to my channel, and please like the video, comment, and tell me what your favorite plant is in your garden. That's exciting. Or what you use mint for. That's also good. Or tips for growing perennials in containers. Let's see. I'm gonna have more garden tour stuff next year when gardening season is among us again. In the meantime, I'll miss you, and thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day. I'm Brooke Cormier, and I'll see you next time. They don't smell. Those ones don't smell.